This episode brought to you by 4th Street Antiques in Imlay City.
This is Thumbing Through the Archives, a weekly radio show and podcast focusing on Michigan history, airing every Wednesday night from 5:30 to 7 p.m. on WMIC 660 AM and 95.3 FM. Also streaming in podcast form at our website, senlacbroadcasting.com. Now your hosts, Mike Gallagher, Nick Lean, and Erica Frisbee.
All right, and we are back once again with another episode of Thumbing Through the Archives, the podcast about the mysteries, histories, and curiosities in Michigan. I'm Erica Frisbee. I am the news director here at Senlac Broadcasting, and with me, per usual,
I'm Mike Gallagher. I'm the sports editor at the Sanilac County News.
And I'm Nick Lean. I'm the assistant manager here at Sanilac Broadcasting.
And I feel like we should mention right off the top, we have a sponsor.
Oh, yeah, that's exciting, and we should mention it. I believe it's our first official sponsor.
Yes, our first official sponsor, 4th Street Antiques, right?
Yes, in Imlay City. They are on Cedar Street in Imlay City. So they're located at 347 North Cedar Street in Imlay City. Just looking at their website, I have not been there in person yet. I do plan on going, but looking at their website and social media, they have all sorts of cool antiques and some really nice furniture in there as well. So if you're out that way in Imlay City, be sure to check out 4th Street Antiques. And thank you for sponsoring the show, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It's very exciting, especially because, again, our first official sponsor.
Yeah, we're the real deal now.
Mm-hmm.
We're on Spotify and Apple, and we even have a sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be getting offers from the networks coming up pretty quick here.
Uh-huh.
That's the next step.
So today we're going back to the 1920s, to the Roaring 20s, and we're specifically going back to Prohibition. And
Boo.
yeah, I was going to say
I think that was just everybody's reaction back then, for the most part.
For the most part, it's like, considering the fact that there's a couple of things that we'll be getting into that's a little bit surprising. Like, Michigan kind of was not one of the first, but they were definitely middle of the pack when it came to the Prohibition stuff. So they were actually somewhat on board with it until they definitely weren't.
By they, do you mean citizens or the government or both?
Citizens for the most part. But the government kind of came around. It took them a while, though. It took them a long while, like 13 years long while.
Wow. At what level are you gonna look at this? Are we talking like local, state, or
So I'm gonna be getting a little bit into the state stuff first, just to give you guys like an idea of what the setting is for the local stuff, because then we're going to be getting kind of along the thumb area. So St. Clair County up to Huron County, basically cool. That whole shoreline, there were rum runners, bootleggers, what have you, plenty of booze moving around. And it's very interesting just because, for one thing, like Sanilac County, Tuscola County, Lapeer County, they were very early adopters of the dry movement, which the dry movement, for our listeners, was the people advocating for prohibition. The people who were saying that alcohol is evil, it is a vice, it is the downfall of the American family. The dry movement had a lot of interesting people behind it, and also a lot of money, surprisingly, in part because industrialists like Henry Ford and, well, since we're talking about Michigan, I'll keep it at Henry Ford. They were like, alcohol makes people lazy. It makes them spend their money where they shouldn't be spending it. And essentially, like, they're not putting money back into the capitalist machine. So why are they like even contributing? So on and so forth.
If you see me like looking behind you, there's a piece of paper sticking out of a folder that says UFO mystery still haunts some.
Yes,
and I'm like looking at that, kind of gears are turning, wondering where you're going to go with that someday, but I don't want to get off track. I just noticed that.
I am working on Michigan UFO stuff.
Awesome. Very excited for that.
there's a surprising number of UFO stuff in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Like a surprising number, and not just in the Elkton Blue Man that Mike brought up last episode, which, again, I need to post those photos. Terrifying photo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you've never seen it?
No.
Oh. I saw.
Just Google Elkton Blue Man?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that is scary.
Yeah.
It's not even blue. Is it?
Well, I think it's a black and white photo. Or maybe they
Did they
Maybe
polarize
okay.
it?
he appeared to be blue or something.
Someone redid the costume.
Oh.
Like last surviving Blue Man prankster. But
Okay.
yeah, I see this original photo here is even more scary.
Yeah.
Yes.
That one.
I feel like a lot of old pictures from that time are just generally
Scary
unsettling.
looking, yeah. I was going to say, if you look up like 1920s Halloween costumes,
Yeah, I don't like those.
no.
I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, we will be diving into UFO stuff, but
Today we're going to learn about booze.
I was going to say,
And-
today we're sticking kind of terrestrial.
Mhm.
So when it comes to law and order, there was a period in American history where everyone misbehaved, be it to get rich quick or to make enough money to keep the wolf from the door, and there was almost nothing that law enforcement can do about it. This period I'm referring to is that of American Prohibition, the Great Dry Experiment, which for 13 years led the everyman to break the law anytime he wanted to enjoy a cold one with the boys. With the liquor law becoming more and more unpopular over the years, more and more criminality and recklessness played into things as the period went on, with the law enacted in 1920 and ending in 1933. To explain Prohibition in Michigan is to try and explain the many social factors at the time. From the fathers of modern industrialism like Henry Ford decrying booze as making a good man lazy, to preachers like Billy Sunday convincing the masses that alcohol contained the devil itself, the dry movement had several aspects that made it rise in popularity. Religion played such a heavy hand in the drive movement that some could put the success of Michigan adopting Prohibition as belonging to Billy Sunday, whose fiery speeches were performed for large crowds and often targeted the saloon keeper, the brewer, and the distiller.
Can we just pause for a moment? Billy Sunday, what a great name for a religious
Yes.
grifter, whatever you want to call him.
Let me see if I can find the picture of Billy Sunday. Was such that
I love it.
Yeah, he apparently preachers back in the day had poses.
Okay.
And
One of his charismatic poses, it says.
Oh, wow.
he's doing the kung fu fighting kind of stance that the kids would do, like
it's like the cardinal or stork pose or whatever
Yeah.
they call it.
He looks frightened.
yeah, he looks surprised.
Yeah.
But that man is apparently the reason why Prohibition was so popular. At
In
least
general,
the
or
idea.
just in Michigan.
In Michigan, to be fair, this book is specifically targeting Michigan. So they talked about how he was brought in and basically did a tour of the entire state.
So he would travel around and advocate for.
Yes. I was going to say, if you guys want to keep flipping through that book, there's a bunch of pictures from like Prohibition. It's very interesting and was very helpful for my research. It's called Rum Running and the Roaring Twenties.
By Philip Mason.
Thank you. Yeah. And he was able to go and find a whole bunch of newspaper articles and old photographs that very helpfully, very succinctly show what Prohibition would have looked like to our ancestors. But yeah, Billy Sunday, very good. Too bad he couldn't have been a televangelist.
He would have been.
He would have been. But yeah, he had a particular ire for German brewers and insisted that foreigners with their drinking cultures had sullied America as he knew it. So,
Huh.
yeah.
It's an interesting take on it.
Another aspect that shouldn't be forgotten is the war effort. So World War I was going on in 1916 still, which was when Michigan was considering adopting Prohibition. So brewing ingredients like grain were seen as a better fit for use by the boys overseas. So when November 1916 came around, Prohibition at least the state amendment for it was ratified pretty easily, like 2-1. However, for thumb counties, as I mentioned, Prohibition started much earlier. Sanilac County was dry by 1909, with Tuscola County the same year, then Lapeer 1910. Huron and St. Clair, I don't believe, became dry until the whole state became dry.
That's crazy to me, because it's the end of the West, the Wild West era with cowboys and stuff, but 1909, you would think there would still be bars and whiskey and...
Oh, don't get me wrong,
But, I mean, legal.
Oh, yeah.
It surprises me that it was that early. I always think Prohibition, I think of like the Roaring 20s, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, it really depended on the county. So, for instance, if you really wanted to drink in 1909 and you lived in Sanilac County, you could go down to St. Clair and it would be completely legal and fine.
Take a long time, though.
Take a long time.
Kind of thinking about it in like today's terms, I feel like it would be the opposite. Like I feel like these counties would be like one of the last to go along with it. But I think when you bring up the religion aspect of it, I think that was probably a much bigger deal back then.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to say the religious aspects of the drive movement definitely cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
Why do you think nowadays these counties would be one of the last?
At least
probably, yeah. I feel like, I think people don't really like being told what to do around here. And I think nowadays, if anybody did try to start Prohibition again, it would be a political thing, obviously.
Yes.
So whichever party would be pushing for it, you would have people immediately saying no just because of that.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it would be much more of a political thing than a religious thing, which I think the religious thing is what made it so prevalent and popular in the first place. Mm-hmm. And also part of the reason why maybe if they tried to do it in like the 70s and 80s when like televangelists were at their height, like if they tried to do it again, I could see maybe some support getting started.
Yeah.
But I don't think Prohibition could happen again.
Right.
Like, unless...
And now there's so much money, these big corporations from overseas that own, like, every beer company in America.
Yes.
I don't think it could happen. There's so much lobbying and money involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, state prohibition officially started in 1918, so they voted for it in 1916. They essentially gave them until May 1917 to stop production of stuff. The state gave them the May deadline as okay, you have to stop all of this. And everybody who obviously wanted their drinks took that deadline as, okay, this is our deadline to get everything that we want in our basement, in our cellar, in our friend's basement. Like, set up the blind pig, set up the smuggling route.
What's this 1920 date then? Is that on a national level?
That's the national level.
Okay. So 1918, Michigan was 2 years before federal.
Yeah, so the law in Michigan was the Damon Law that prohibited the import of liquor to the state. So Damon Law, this is what officially went into effect on May 1st, 1917. When the consumption, production, and transport of alcohol allowed until then, people scrambled to stock up or prepare for a new kind of business, bootlegging and rum running. Within a few hours of the May curfew, there was already a smuggling network established between Michigan and Ohio, especially Toledo, and the Detroit River soon began seeing dinghies and rowboats dotting its water as they made their way to pick up their illicit drink. So there were a lot of creative methods used to transport the booze. So there's when you guys think of prohibition smuggling, what methods do you guys think of? Because I can tell you that they probably thought of it during this period.
It's a good question.
I think of boats going across the Detroit River from Windsor. It's like the image I have in my head.
I'm picturing high-speed police chases in an old Model T.
You're not wrong, honestly. And it's kind of funny that you say that, because like the police would have the older Model Ts while the bootleggers would have the nicer cars, because they're the ones with the money.
Yeah. Which
is oftentimes what led to them getting away. But creative methods like false breasts, including like women breasts, as well as like fake chests that men could like pull over and wear on themselves, kind of like a bulletproof vest kind of thing.
They had booze in them?
Yeah. Kind of like hot water bottle kind of situation. And they also hollowed out bread loaves and stuck like wine bottles in there. And they even like modified their cars like to carry more booze under the seat and the floorboards. Don't ask me how they got it under the floorboards. There's probably a picture in the book that would show you exactly how they did it, but it's frankly amazing how much booze they managed to fit into these like Model A cars, especially considering what the Model A was, which was nicer than a Model T. It was a little bit more involved than a Model T, but they had booze shoved to the gills in these kind of things, and they would have like long caravans and just like a bunch of guys waiting at the docks to like load stuff up and everything. So bootlegging, rum running, and blind pigs became common gigs, with early enforcement of the liquor laws so lax that fines for getting caught were just business expenses. So it would be like technically $100, but it's like, because this was before the 30s and the Great Depression, that was like no big deal.
Right.
There's a bit in this book you mentioned about underwater cables that would pull like rafts under the river, like on the along the riverbed. That's wild.
Yeah, they were so creative with how they got their booze. Cables, they would have sleds. I don't think snowmobiles were invented yet, but they definitely probably would have had them if they could have.
Jalopies, is that how do you say it? Jalopies? 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 Jalopies. Mike saves a day.
He usually does. So by the time national prohibition of alcohol rolled around in 1920, the Thumb and Blue Water area residents were pros at finding where to get their next sip of hooch, with bootleg liquor coming through all along the coast from Marysville to Caseville. One official claimed that it was not unusual for $30,000 to $50,000 worth of liquor to come through Marine City on any given night. You have to understand that, like, yes, there were the Purple Gang and like organized crime syndicates and everything like that, but that was usually more down by Detroit. When it came to Caseville, Algonac, Marine City, it was more like individual contractors. So these individual contractors would be maybe like 7 or so, like working any given night, and between the 7 of them, they were bringing in $50,000.
Wow.
That's really good.
Yeah. Which is part of the reason why people were very much wanting to get in on the action if they were looking at it as a money venture.
Yeah, as long as you don't get busted.
And even if you get busted, you can afford it.
What would they do to people if are you going to get into that, or okay?
So law enforcement struggled to catch bootleggers and rum runners, and generally struggled with enforcing the Volstead Act, the federal law officially criminalizing certain kinds of booze. One local lawman noted that it was hard to enforce a law when half the country didn't believe in prohibition or that these people should be in jail. So usually when they did get caught, it would be jail sentences. It would be seizing the property that they found the liquor in. It would more so be fines, trying to hit them where it hurts. But again, it usually didn't do anything.
You weren't getting thrown in prison for the rest of your life or have to worry about serious repercussions.
Not until like the third offense. First count, second count, maybe like 2 months in jail. And then like you get the book thrown at you. But even so, it's like, based on what I read in the newspapers, like Michigan, especially St. Clair County and the lower courts of Michigan, and they were very, very lax when it came to sentencing and enforcement of sentences. So people were getting paroled a lot earlier than they probably should have been. Half of the country didn't believe that bootleggers should be in jail, and that applied to the counties on Michigan's coast. So waterfront residents would signal bootleggers about law enforcement or turn a blind eye when their boathouses and docks were used as rendezvous points and drop spots.
Did I ever tell you the story about my uncle, my great uncle?
I think so, but tell it to us again.
His name was Nunzio Giassoni. And
awesome.
That's a great name.
It would have been my grandmother's sister's husband. So through marriage, I'm not Italian at all, but he was like 100%. And when he was a teenager, he worked at the docks in Detroit. And one night he was new there. My understanding of the story, he had just started. He flipped a breaker and I accidentally turned the floodlights on the Detroit River, like at the dock he was working at. And he looked out and just quick enough to see a glimpse of just like countless like dinghies and rafts and stuff on the river. And someone shouts out, "Turn that blankety blank light off right now." And he panicked and just flipped the breaker back off. Wow. And just like left and was freaked out. And then I guess the next day when he went there was a case of booze of some sort for him, like because he turned the light off. I mean, that sounds like a story a great uncle tells you, right? But I hope it's true.
It's a story that gets repeated often, like by other dock workers. So honestly, like, it sounds like it happened because it probably did happen, especially during this time. Because I'm trying to remember, like literally sounded like your story, I think, was recounted in the book, but I can't remember if it was the Detroit River or St. Clair. But either way, like, if you flipped a light on during night rum running operations, most of the time you would get somebody yelling to turn that blankety blank light off. In addition to people like just turning blind eyes to people breaking the law enforcement were often outnumbered and under-equipped for the task of enforcement, with 75% of all liquor smuggled during Prohibition crossing from Canada by the way of shared waterways with Michigan. So Detroit and St. Clair rivers, and to a lesser extent Lake Huron and Lake Erie. Though Canadian law enforcement in Ontario was cooperative with American counterparts, their smugglers were equally as cooperative with American smugglers, with Canadian smugglers stationing themselves in beer scows, which were barge-like vessels anchored just off of Canadian shores to sell their wares, often shipped in from Quebec, which did not recognize Prohibition like Ontario did. Depending on the scow, smugglers could hide in the swamps and islands that made up the St. Clair Flats. There would be this delta of little islands and marshes and stuff like that. And if you were trying to hide out from law enforcement and you had a bunch of beer, you could just park yourself on one of those islands and wait it out.
And they didn't have the resources like they do now to be able to go in after you.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the closest I could maybe get to comparing this time period to a recent time period would maybe be like the cocaine smuggling that we talked about in the 70s and 80s. And even though 80s and 70s law enforcement were also under-equipped for that task, it seems that they still had a bit farther progress when it came to actually catching people. I'm not quite sure why that is, though. Maybe development of technology and stuff like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So another difficulty that Prohibition law enforcement had, lawmen themselves recognized the fact that most smugglers and blind pig operators, especially when the Great Depression hit in 1929, they recognized that they were only doing these illegal things to live. Some lawmen even frequented the blind pigs in their off time, not squealing on the owners, but if they received a report while on duty, then they'd be forced to act. So this was actually the case at a Port Huron speakeasy. It was operated out of a family basement, and it was raided by authorities. So from the Times-Herald, The Richert family became involved with the illegal side of Prohibition when William Richert was laid off from his job at Mueller Brass Company. An uncle, Joe Pringinger, a wheeler dealer who smoked cigars and wore a derby, had the answer. The solution? Open a blind pig. The two men, with the help of a neighbor, built a bar down the basement. They also made tables and chairs. Another friend set up a couple of slot machines, and they added a jukebox. Pringinger was in charge of getting the beer, which he somehow smuggled in from Canada in his Model T Ford. Most of the customers were friends or acquaintances from Mueller Brass. But somebody squealed and William Richert was arrested. He returned home that night about midnight after paying a $75 fine. Police had only discovered beer during the raid. Had they found the secret stash of whiskey, bourbon, and gin hidden in a false step leading to the attic, the fine would have been much higher. But again, literally just a fine, and then he went right back to his family.
Mm-hmm.
And they shut it down.
Yeah. Back at the house, the family surveyed the damage. The children recall sitting on a wooden step leading to the basement, amazed at all the broken glass and the puddles of beer that laid below. One of the kids said, it was 5 inches of beer in the basement. I'm not sure if that's true, especially because they were kids at the time.
So because of the authorities, to get rid of their stash or wreck it, they smashed the barrels or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like there's got to be a better way of doing that, but maybe it was to prove a point or something.
Mm-hmm. I think it was technically to
send a message.
Yeah. Shortly after the raid, William Richert learned that an abandoned hotel was for sale across the city's old railroad depot on Railroad Street. With all the friends he made running the speakeasy, he was encouraged to buy the place and start a legitimate business. The family's children don't know how they got the money, but they're convinced it wasn't from the speakeasy. The family turned the hotel into Richards, a restaurant and nightclub, in 1933. It was one of Port Huron's leading restaurants for decades. So, pretty cool that they were able to, turn an official legal leaf after all of it. Kind of sucks that they had to get their stuff trashed in the first place, but people on both sides of the law agree that for the most part, local bootleggers, blind pig owners, and brewers were average people trying to make a dollar during the lean times leading up to the Great Depression. Smugglers were also active north of Port Huron, with one resident saying, "We lived on the shore of Lake Huron, and others were transporting what they called rum runners across the lake in a boat. They were called steamers, out to make a nickel any way they could." And this was Clara Grice Candle of Forester Township. So a certain courtliness seemed to exist between Border Patrol agents and rum runners. The agents did their jobs and the bootleggers did theirs. No hard feelings and little violence. As one Border Patrol officer said, our relationship with the smugglers wasn't too hostile. A lot of them were just regular people. That didn't mean, however, there wasn't violence during the period in the area. Brown City's first ever murder happened during Prohibition to an alleged blind pig operator, while St. Clair County's law enforcement warned each other of a gun-happy run runner who eventually did kill an officer while both were on the job. That's where we'll be taking our first break, but what are you guys feeling so far?
I'm kind of interested in the Brown City thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I was surprised to see it called Brown City's first murder.
Yeah.
Especially because a bit of me is like, are we sure that it's the first murder for Brown City ever?
Right.
But Times Herald and Minden City Herald both insisted that it was the first ever murder for Brown City.
Wow.
Again, I'm sure that if I go back into the archives, I could find something that is technically back in 1863 that was a murder in what is now Brown City, but at least from what is recognized now, Minden City Herald and Times Herald said it was the first murder in Brown City.
Wow.
When was Brown City incorporated as a city?
I should have looked that up because that probably would have answered a couple questions, because it probably was a
couple weeks before the murder.
Yeah. Well, technically we weren't a city when that other murder happened.
Technicalities.
Yep.
But yeah, unfortunately we won't be getting into the Brown City murder next, but that's just because chronologically speaking it happens after this next case. But we'll be right back. Right, and we are back. So if we're going chronologically, we start first with Sylvester Vett Brown, the gun-happy rum runner who ultimately took a man's life one March night on the St. Clair River. So Vett was born in 1899 to Frank and Emma Brown, the only child of 4 to make it past the age of 4 in the family. So his siblings died usually by age 3, and he was the only one who grew up past age 4. So go Vett, poor Vett. So,
poor lucky Vett.
I mean, I say poor Vett just because of the fact that it's like, I don't know, it feels like there would be a lot of pressure on the kid just for the sheer fact of like, you're the one that survived.
Mm-hmm. Carry on the family name now.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it made the parents protective and the family close, with Emma being seen to stick with her son through thick and thin. And though he was born in Oakland County, his family very shortly moved to Lamont Township in Sanilac County, so over by Marlette, if I'm thinking right.
Mm-hmm.
So his father farmed over by Marlette, and Vett attended local schools through the 8th grade when he began farming alongside his father. He later attended the Michigan Home and Training School in Lapeer, probably around 1918 or so, as his first son was born in Lapeer County in 1919. That son, Frank Alfred, was born to Vett and his first wife, Lottie, with the couple being married the year before the birth. By 1920, the young man had moved his family down to Detroit as he worked as a motorman and conductor on the local rail cars. He also worked at Ford, with it seeming that around this time his second son, Lyle, was born in Detroit. It's unclear when the family moved back to Lapeer, but it appears that they possibly did so prior to 1928, when Vett would be dealt with 2 blows: his father's death in February, and then his divorce in July. The divorce was possibly in response to some trouble Vett had gotten into, as he had been raided at their home in Burnside Township, where police found 840 pints of beer, 3 quarts of gin, 3 quarts of whiskey, and 5.5 quarts of port wine, all from Canada. Well, correction. The police didn't technically raid Vett. Vett was not home at the time, so Lottie, his wife, was the one who was taken in and imprisoned for possession of the liquor because she was the one who was home.
Yeah.
That sounds too like it could have just been a personal stash. Was he selling, or was that just...
He was selling.
Okay. Because, I mean, that sounds like people who would be stocking up on booze. That's...
like the 3 quarts and stuff
right.
like that. But once you get to the 840 pints of beer...
I mean, that's not that bad.
Yeah.
That's a couple weeks.
My name is Nick Lean.
No, for the record, I don't drink regularly, but I used to in my college days. That's a couple weeks. For some reason in my head, I was singing like 180 when you said it. I don't know why, but
that's fair. Yeah, no, 840.
800 some is
a couple weeks. But yeah, Lottie was the one who was taken into jail for possession of all that.
Is that a divorceable offense? I feel like it's right on the line.
I was going to say it depends on how contentious this issue has been between them.
Right. Or if she even knew about it.
Yes. Like if she knew about it.
There's 2 ways that could have gone bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And how much he threw her under the bus,
Right.
Considering the fact that he was not at the home at the time, and he did eventually trade spots with her, essentially.
Oh, that's good.
But it took him a hot minute to get back to trade spots with her.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like depending on how long my partner takes to come and get me after I take the fall for them is the degree of divorceability.
Right.
So if I wait more than a day...
What about the fact that his dad just died too, though?
If I wait more than a day, I'm still going to be kind of peeved.
You think that makes it okay?
Yeah, he was just
dealing with
He was just going through it.
Yeah.
He was going through it.
Yeah.
He had a lot going on.
I'm not trying to be a downer on this dude, but his dad died in February and this happened in July.
I was like, wasn't that a 7 or 8 month difference?
People grieve in different ways.
You're not wrong.
Some do it with 814 pints of beer.
Exactly.
A few weeks.
Yeah.
So, in addition to getting caught with all that liquor and stuff like that, In March 1928, about 4 months before the divorce, Vett would be arrested again, this time with an accomplice at a ferry dock by customs officers as they were running liquor to Marine City, with 36 bottles of whiskey found. Brown attempted to escape, but he was unable to draw his weapon before he became overpowered by the law. He was the only one who was armed in the confrontation. Literally, one of the old rum runners in the Times-Herald article series for Prohibition, like they did a whole article series 50 years after the fact, and one of them said, like, the best piece of advice we got while rum running was actually from a customs officer who told us to get rid of our guns because then we won't be tempted to use them and we will not, run into the possibility that we could kill somebody and go to jail for even longer than necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was not a lesson that Vett seemed to want to learn. Vett wanted to be seen as the tough guy, so he was always armed.
Yeah.
And oftentimes he was the only one armed in the confrontations.
So, like, even the customs agents didn't have guns?
Not like what Vett had.
Wow.
And cops did not carry.
Not like they should have.
Yeah.
It also doesn't help that... So Brown was slapped with a concealed carry violation in addition to the liquor law violation, especially because his gun was stocked with dum-dum bullets, which dum-dum bullets are expanding bullets, which actually are a war crime to use.
So kind of like expand like buckshot would, or like...
Like they're like hollow point.
Oh, okay.
They're not a war crime anymore, but back then they would have been, right?
Not a war crime anymore?
Why do you know that, Nick?
Because they just change the name of them and sell them in fancy packaging, and they pay more money for it. The hollow points.
True, but yeah, dum-dum expanding bullets. They kind of spread out like a star would, in a way. It's not good. It's, I guess, kind of like buckshot in a way. If the buckshot stayed together and
yeah, it just makes a larger exit wound, right? My understanding of it.
Okay.
Larger entry and exit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a good time, but...
Also, I think, like, back then, those were kind of illicit. Like, it was something that people made.
That's part of the reason why he was slapped with the concealed carry thing. Of once they found out, like, oh, not only are you carrying a gun, but it's dum-dum bullets.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was he wanted for his Marine City shenanigans at that point, but he was also wanted by Lapeer and Detroit authorities. His car was seized under a law that ordained that the presence of one bottle of liquor was enough to warrant confiscation. He was fined $100, now about $1,800, and given 3 months in jail, ultimately pleading guilty to the concealed carry charge so as not to be charged with assault with intent to kill, because having the dum-dum bullets apparently was enough to show that you're willing to kill somebody.
I don't think just having a gun.
Yeah.
So finishing out his jail sentence, Vett was back out on the streets and back to rum running on the river in no time. His name was often repeated to members of the Customs and Border Patrol agencies, not as a target, but as a warning. One of these days, they said, he's actually going to shoot somebody. And they were right, in the worst way possible, as one of their own fell by his hands. It was March 23rd, 1929, and Vett was on a rum run with 19-year-old Clayton Smith. The two had met earlier that Saturday, with the almost 30-year-old asking the younger man if he wanted to work that night. The two later met at a beer scow anchored off the Canadian town of Sombra, which is right across from Marine City on the St. Clair River. The younger man met Vett in his rowboat, while the rum runner had a motorboat for his uses. Loading 36 cases of whiskey into the motorboat, the two made their way back to Algonac, with the motorboat towing the rowboat as they went. Once at Algonac, they took 10 cases to shore via the rowboat, with Clayton returning and getting in the motorboat, with the plan to pull up to the dock with the two boats. However, unbeknownst to them, they had company waiting for them at the dock, 2 Federal Border Patrol officers. In his confession, Clayton described it as, "We saw the flash of a flashlight and saw 2 men. We knew they were officers. Brown said, 'The blank 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 will not take me alive.' One of the officers jumped into the motorboat. Brown shot, and as he did, I jumped into my rowboat and started away from the scene. Other shots were fired, some by the other officer and some by Brown, who had started back to his boat out onto the stream. With the wounded officer still in his boat, it appears Brown panicked, dumping the officer named Earl Roberts at the Canadian port of Port Lambton, calling to a youth to get help before he sped off in the motorboat. Brown was later found 4 miles away, back at the somber beer scow, seemingly trying to keep business going or perhaps hiding out. Either way, he was apprehended within 2 hours of the shooting, with the wounded man being taken to St. Clair's Community Hospital. Kind of quick action, literally. They pull up to the dock. They don't have a chance to really get close to it before essentially Border Patrol put your hands up and somebody's jumping in the boat to arrest them. As he jumps, apparently he gets shot, falls back into the boat, and then Brown is exchanging fire with the other guy who is still on the dock trying to defend the guy who just got shot. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Roberts, who would go on to die at 4:30 p.m. the next day, gave his account of the incident on his deathbed. Though he had been wearing street clothes rather than his uniform at the time, he said he identified himself as a federal officer as he jumped into the boat, no gun in hand as he did. When Brown grabbed his firearm, the agent thought it was only a monkey wrench, and thus was taken by surprise when he was shot. Behind him, his partner returned fire, with Brown and the other officer shooting at each other as Brown fled. So Roberts did have a gun, he just didn't have it in hand when he confronted them.
Right.
Which apparently was a bad idea.
Yeah. He also must not have realized, who he was dealing with.
I was going to say.
If people were already talking about how he was willing to kill people,
yeah,
I don't think you would jump into his boat in plain clothes without your gun out.
Yeah, you saying that really actually puts things together because he literally joined the force 3 months before this incident.
Okay.
And he was from Chicago.
Yeah.
So he was not in the area to have heard about Vet Brown before.
Right. Because also when he pulled his gun, he thought it was a monkey wrench. I think that's a weird assumption to make.
It's a very optimistic assumption,
right,
all things considering.
Yeah.
Roberts attested to the fact that Brown threw his own gun overboard before taking Roberts' gun and emptying it of its cartridges, which he instead put in Roberts' coats, returning the gun to the holster. The sad irony to the situation is that Roberts had joined this line of work, believing it would be safer than his previous job as an armed guard for a Chicago company. While he was no longer at risk of being held up for his delivery, he had unknowingly walked right into the line of fire of reckless Vet Brown. Vet would attest that he meant to shoot Roberts in the leg, that he hadn't meant to kill the officer, but when he returned fire at Roberts' partner, he had shot to kill then. Roberts' partner cursed that he had just traded his heavier gun.
It's kind of a funny confession.
Yeah.
Because he was defending himself.
Right.
He was only going to kill someone in his own defense.
Right.
I don't know if that would get you less of a punishment.
Right. But the only reason the other cop was shooting him was because he shot the other cop.
Right.
But only in the leg. He was only trying to hit him in the leg.
Yeah.
I was going to say he definitely didn't shoot him in the leg.
Right.
His aim was horribly off. In fairness, though, I don't know if I could shoot at a moving target either.
On a boat.
On a boat, when you're in the boat and it's jumping at you.
Were these with the expanding bullets?
I have no idea. Probably, honestly. But yeah, Robert's partner cursed that he had just traded his heavier gun in for a lighter one just that day and had only 5. Yeah, it's just a bad time all around.
Bad job. I guess not bad job, just bad luck, maybe.
Bad luck, because I was I just traded in my Smith & Wesson for this lighter thing.
I just moved here from Chicago.
I just moved here from Chicago and my partner just traded in his gun.
Yeah, wow.
We're going to catch the bad guys. They did their best.
Yeah, I guess.
That's the other thing. It never was made clear if the gun was traded in because they thought that the lighter gun was the upgrade, or if it was budget cuts, boys. Got to turn in your nice guns, and here's the crappier guns. It was never made clear what kind of situation it was.
What was it they had, and what did they go to again? You said a Smith & Wesson.
And yeah, they had a Smith & Wesson. I can't remember what they went to, though. He had only 5 cartridges when he was exchanging fire. Brown cursed that he hadn't also been killed in the shootout, with federal punishment for killing a federal officer imposing a death by hanging. However, Brown was able to plead to first-degree murder at the state level, which ensured his life, though it would be spent at Jackson Prison. Within 5 days of committing the crime, Vet Brown was committed for life to Jackson Prison. Before he left, he was visited by his first wife as well as his second wife. He told his first wife that he wouldn't be here if he had actually listened to her, and told the second that he was somewhat relieved to no longer be looking over his shoulder for the law or other rum runners. He planned to be a model prisoner and seek parole. For their part, the Immigration Services took care of Roberts' widow and 2 children, employing Estella Roberts as the matron of the Immigration Services in October 1929. It wasn't until September 1946, when he requested a new trial, did Brown really lift his head and make noise. When requesting the trial, he claimed he had confessed under coercion and had had no legal counsel at the time, being subjected to quick justice instead. He would claim that he had thought Roberts was a hijacker, not a federal agent, and that he had always meant to shoot him in the knee, not kill him.
I think the first part of that defense is fair.
Right.
Because if he was in plain clothes, just the fact that he said he was a federal agent, that could be something that a hijacker would say. I mean, I don't know. But the kid that he was with said that they knew it, that they were cops. So.
Yeah. I think they lucked out with the fact that Clayton Smith wasn't able to testify at one of the trials.
Oh.
Because I think that made all the difference.
Yeah.
But he was granted a new trial, but that trial didn't return a different verdict at first. The jury convicted him of first-degree murder once more. But then a second appeal pointed out that Brown could have and should have been tried for second-degree murder. I can't remember why they were saying second rather than first. I think the premeditation aspect of it, they were trying to say, well, since he thought it was a hijacker, he was acting in self-defense. Self-defense is second degree. In 1948, it was decided that a second retrial would take place, with the charges now reduced to second degree. Brown pleaded guilty to the new charges, which saw him sentenced to 25 to 50 years, with time for about 18 years served already. The next year, in 1949, he would win parole, going to live with relatives in Flint. He divorced his second wife, or she divorced him, it's unclear, with Brown remarrying in 1950. He ultimately passed away in 1981, perhaps no longer a rum runner, but perhaps a bit quick on the trigger still. But that is at least the tale of Vet Brown.
Kind of interesting how he turned his life around like that. I mean,
a bit of me is like, I don't know if he turned his life around necessarily. I mean, it seemed that he was doing what he knew best when he was out and about. And then once you're out of the situation, once you're out of the Prohibition era and you don't have to rum run anymore, then you're kind of forced to behave, I feel.
Yeah, what he knew was no longer a thing when he got out of prison in terms of his skill of rum running. It became useless.
He could just go to the store.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of weird.
It's not the same.
Yeah. I killed a guy over this. You're just selling it at the gas station now.
Man, that would be kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's like there's people in prison for the rest of their lives, and you can go to a concert at Pine Knob and buy a joint now.
Yeah.
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah. Also, it just kind of popped up in my head when you mentioned Jackson Prison. Did his time there overlap with Dr. McGregor? I can't remember when he was there.
I think Dr. McGregor died in 1928, I believe. So unfortunately, he
just missed him.
But good catch, good thought.
I don't know why that would be interesting, but
it's always definitely interesting when certain prisoners that you're aware of cross paths and stuff.
Yeah.
Again, I need to cover a prisoner who served with John Norman Collins at Jackson Prison as well, who John possibly helped escape from Jackson Prison. And that guy was from Port Huron.
Wow.
It's definitely an interesting thing to think about, so I don't blame you for trying to make that connection. So the story of Brown City's first murder is a sadder story than the tale of Vet Brown.
His tale was pretty sad.
I was going to say, it's sadder in part because it highlights the measures that people would take to survive during the worst periods. One of the worst periods of American history, the Great Depression, which lasted from 1929 to 1939. This case happened in 1932, 3 years into the Depression, and perhaps when desperation was recognized as the name of the game, with many turning to activities they'd otherwise never do in better times to get by. Thomas Lifflander, age 55 in 1932, seemed to recognize that, being known as a blind pig operator in the short time he was in the Thumb area. So Thomas had been born in Russia in 1877 to Michael and Zelda Lifflander, and would immigrate to the United States in 1892 with his wife Dora, who was also born in Russia. Though the two did settle in Pennsylvania for a time, having several children, they ultimately relocated to Detroit, where Thomas began work in the auto industry. It's unclear why they separated, but Thomas moved to the Brown City area after his separation from Dora, who remained in Detroit. He began work as an oil station owner, where he sold oil at cut rates and had a junkyard for used car parts. Both respectable gigs, but the junkyard apparently was a front to sell liquor from, and he also operated blind pigs on farms in St. Clair, Lapeer, and Sanilac counties. So, not necessarily like a mob figure or like a kingpin in any way, shape, or form, but definitely a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
He's an entrepreneur.
Yes. So despite everyone knowing that Lifflander was selling, it was still surprising for a customer who came for car parts early October 17th, 1932, to find the man dead. His head was covered by a sheet, thankfully sparing the man the sight of a man who had been bludgeoned to death. Very quickly, 3 of the former workers of Thomas Lifflander, 2 from Burnside Township, 1 from Detroit, were taken in for questioning, with the Detroit man eventually released, cleared of the crime. Though investigation did turn to Detroit for a time, as there was a theory that whoever Lifflander had been working with had been slighted and sought revenge. They also thought that because Lifflander was involved with rum running, that he was involved in the Purple Gang, and that the Purple Gang had knocked him out.
Wow.
It was ultimately found that it was robbery, with Lifflander's pockets being picked through and a glass window pane covered in fingerprints as if it was lifted out of the frame to break into the shack that Lifflander had been found near. 32-year-old John Urban and 40-year-old Peter Collywort eventually admitted to the crime, with Collywort at first blaming the killing solely on Urban. They had taken $15, about $360 now, a watch, and a flashlight. Though they had quit their jobs with Lifflander 3 weeks prior, there is some hint of tension between the workers and the boss. The two ultimately said they had planned the robbery to get money to live off of for the winter. Do not ask me why somebody would quit a job and then go back to rob their boss. I don't get it either. Though, go ahead.
They probably knew like the ins and outs where he kept the money and stuff, or I mean, maybe.
You would think so, but they only took $15, a watch, and a flashlight.
That's true.
Which, if he was selling booze, you would think that he would have at least
more than that stashed somewhere.
Yeah. So they allegedly didn't mean to kill him, but they still beat him to death with a piece of board and a metal pipe. They said, we were trying to knock him out, and they did more than that. So they did that before they broke into the shack via the window. Finding nothing, they instead looted the body before fleeing. They were still caught within 12 hours of the crime. Both of them were sentenced to life in prison by Judge Xenophone Boomhauer. Though Urban would later have his sentence commuted 30 years later, moving to Philadelphia to live with his mother. A short and a bummer of a story. I will admit that. It's, again, I don't want to say it's a murder befitting Brown City, but it's definitely a small town murder.
I feel like the notion that is directly connected to Prohibition, because didn't you say at the beginning a quote from somebody saying it was Prohibition led to Brown City's first murder? Is that really? It's just because that's what he did for a living and he got robbed, but it wasn't like over a deal gone bad or.
No, the police and the newspapers were definitely hoping that it was.
Right. They spun it that way.
Yeah. they spun it that way because they were like, well, maybe the Purple Gang will show up at some point in this story.
Yeah.
They really never did. Even though they went to Detroit and stuff like that, they questioned Dora, and Dora was just kind of like, I'm surprised that he even got into the liquor business, honestly. But yeah, it's more of a short bummer of a story, almost nothing to do with Prohibition. So let me instead leave you with a brighter, funnier, much more directly connected note for Prohibition. It's August 1st, 1928, and U.S. Border Patrol Chief Inspector Howard Blackmore orders 2,400 bottles of beer to be dumped off a Lexington dock. The inspector had been told by a helpful local resident that the local waters were deep, at least 12 feet, deep enough to deter anyone trying to get the booze, and it was an option that didn't mean that they would be crashing glass all over the nice beach and ruining a nice summer day for everybody. So they dumped the booze off the dock.
In the bottles.
Because they didn't want to cart it back to Marine City. Yeah, he thought he was saving himself and his men the trouble of carting the beer back to Marine City so that they could properly destroy the contraband. But what he didn't know was the resident had been lying. The dock that the beer had been dumped off of was anchored in 6 feet of water, not 12, with many locals rushing to the beach to either dive in for the illicit treasure or watch other people tumble off the docks and joyfully return with arms of beer.
That's awesome.
But that was a fun day in Lexington.
Yeah.
It went on for 2 days. With 300 people taking part and observing, a long procession formed as the townsfolk paraded into town with the booze. The scenes of drunkenness would mean the event was a 2-day ordeal for some, after which at least one citizen complained. And so was born the Lexington Beer Party, something that Blackmore would have to live down in his otherwise illustrious career.
Wow. That should be a holiday in Lexington.
I was just going to say, they should bring that back.
I was going to say, we should...
whatever 2 days it was.
It was August 1st and 2nd.
Oh, perfect. End of summer.
Yep.
Beach is probably perfect.
Lexington Beer Party.
Yeah.
Maybe like the Lexington Jobby Nooner.
Yeah.
So ultimately, Prohibition ended in 1933 with the policy seen as a failure as it increased criminality both by mobsters and the everyman, and it resulted in loss of taxable revenue, especially at the start of the Depression. Franklin D. Roosevelt ran on a platform of legalizing drinking when he ran for president in 1932, and he did so just a year later, with many across the nation raising a glass in relief to return to a kind of normal where wetting one's whistle wasn't a felony, but just something to enjoy. And that's the end of my script. Yeah, I'm glad that I was at least able to find a Lexington Beer Party because...
I think that one's my favorite.
Yeah.
Are there any photos of any...
I don't think so, unfortunately. I was hoping so, but no.
What year was it?
1928, I believe.
1928.
Yes, 1928.
Did you find that story in the Times Herald?
I did.
I wonder if the Jeffersonian would have anything about it.
I did try to look it up.
Yeah, there wasn't anything.
Not at least. I should have probably just gone back and
by the date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. That was probably my problem.
In the older editions, it's hard to pick up the word sometimes through the search.
Yeah. So honestly, that was my mistake. So I probably should go back and see if they have anything.
Why were they dumping it in Lexington?
Because they had got a big cachet of it.
Oh, in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That makes sense.
And
it's kind of funny, too, that they just threw it in the lake
Yeah.
to, the pollution aspect of it.
Well, we don't want to litter the beach with glass.
Yeah.
So we'll just dump
Fill
it into
your...
the dock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where boats come and that much booze, too. That's going to pile up under there.
Yeah.
But it was 12 feet. It's okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, hats off to that resident who was like, oh, yeah, no, it's 12 feet.
Yeah.
It's not 6 feet. It's 12 feet. It'll be completely fine, guys.
I imagine the town drunk being the guy.
Oh, my
Right.
gosh.
Sitting there, sitting on the dock and like, oh, yeah, it's 12 feet. I'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
What about the one citizen that complained? They must have sucked.
I was going to say,
What a jerk.
according to the newspaper, people were like literally lying around because they were just so drunk.
That's awesome.
Which, and again, if you do like the quick math, like 2,400 bottles, there were 300 people who, if not participated, like observed. So that's like, what, 80 bottles per person?
Was it beer?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could really market a fun, like, summer festival around that.
Honestly, we probably should try and do something like that.
Find a local bar or something that would put like a tent up out there.
Well, guys, we have a goal for the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lexington Beer Party, let's do it.
I feel like that's pretty much just what Lexington is now anyway.
Yeah.
In the summer.
Pretty much.
True.
So in your research, did you find anything about like the marijuana, like smoke parlors that popped up during Prohibition?
I did not, but to be fair, I wasn't looking very hard for the giggleweed.
The giggleweed, yeah.
I was looking mostly for the booze.
Mm-hmm. I always thought that was interesting that, you know, as a result of banning alcohol, people still wanted something to inebriate themselves with. And these smoke parlors would pop up where people would just hang out and smoke marijuana. And the story is that William Randolph Hearst, the big newspaper baron, started printing a bunch of these propaganda stories in his newspapers about, mothers killing their babies after they smoked pot and stuff, and just this unsubstantiated stuff about how evil marijuana was. And he was actually a ghost producer of the Reefer Madness movie. And the reason for that was because he owned a big stake in a bunch of liquor companies. So after Prohibition ended, he started pumping out all this propaganda about how bad marijuana was, and it was outlawed at a federal level shortly after Prohibition was overturned because it was threatening profits for...
And this is why I'm glad that Orson Welles made Citizen Kane about him.
Yeah, he was not a very good guy.
No, unfortunately not. But yeah, that finishes up my script, and I think this episode...
I did want to mention, we talk about Forrester a lot on this show. That building on the corner at the end of Forrester, I guess it would be Forrester Road, like right at the corner where the campground is. That was
by the gas station by Griner's Corner.
Nope, like closer.
That's Deckerville Road.
That's Deckerville Road. But at the end of Forrester Road, that building right on the corner, that was a pretty well-known blind pig.
Was it a red building?
They just, a few years ago, they like made it nice again.
Great big one.
Nice.
Yeah. But that was a pretty well-known blind pig.
In the southwest corner in Forrester?
Yes. Yeah.
I know the one.
Yep. And then I was kind of expecting to hear about Sheriff Lulu.
Yeah.
But she probably deserves her own episode.
Yes,
really.
She does.
She was the sheriff in Huron County during Prohibition.
The speakeasy.
Wow. There was a female sheriff in Huron County at that.
There was actually one in Sanilac County as well.
Wow.
During Prohibition, because back in that time, if the sheriff passed away while he was in office, the wife took over.
That's amazing.
As the sheriff, yeah. So in Sanilac County, it was Sheriff McGinnis. There was only, I think, like 6 months left on her husband's term, and then she didn't rerun. But Sheriff Lulu was sheriff for quite some time in Huron County, I think.
Did she get put in because her husband died?
I think so. But then she ran for re-election. Yeah. So that's their new speakeasy, Sheriff Lulu's, is named after her. But Sheriff McGinnis, she didn't really want to do the job, because she would, but...
Fair enough.
So there's not a ton of information about her time, but she did bust up, not a speakeasy, but basically people that were making alcohol in Peck.
Like distillers?
Yeah, distillers, yeah.
Oh, in Peck?
Yeah. Do
you know where in Peck?
I don't. I just remember because I thought that it would be a good episode for, to talk about her, but really there wasn't much that happened during her time other than that. But
what was her first name?
I don't remember.
That's fair.
And I don't know Sheriff Lulu's last name.
That's fair.
But she probably deserves her own episode.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned them, though.
Yeah.
Especially McGinnis, because I did not know that she broke up Distillers and Peck.
There's actually a pretty cool picture on the Sanilac District
library.
Yeah, of her, and like basically it was her and her family that ended up being the sheriff, like
the sheriff's office.
Yeah, the sheriff's office, and it was like her and two daughters.
Oh wow!
It might have been 2 or 3 daughters, but it was a pretty cool picture. But unfortunately, I mean, it's not unfortunate, but you know, she didn't serve for very long, and
yeah.
But still pretty cool.
Definitely
pretty terrible cool. Way of deciding who the sheriff should be.
Yeah.
If he dies. I think that's probably what the role of an undersheriff is now.
Yeah. Yeah, that probably helps out a lot.
The grieving widow is suddenly thrust into this responsibility of...
Which, like, to be fair, back in the day, it made a little bit of sense because, like, they were also helping take care of the jail and the inmates and everything like that already.
Right.
So, like, it's one of those things of, like, well, of course we're going to keep somebody who's, like, familiar on until we can get a new sheriff.
Yeah.
We've already built up trust with all these people, so...
Mm-hmm.
But no, very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, on that note, I'm Erica.
I'm Nick.
Mike. I went first at the beginning.
I know.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes, you did. Mm-hmm. I'm Erica.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Mike.
And this was Thumbing Through the Archives. Bye-bye.
This has been another edition of Thumbing Through the Archives on WMIC 660 AM and 95.3 FM. Catch this episode in podcast form every Thursday after the program on our website at sanilacbroadcasting.com. Thumbing Through the Archives, produced by Mike Gallagher, Nick Lean, and Erica Frisbee, with assistance from Catherine Connolly.